This audio lecture is on sociolinguistics, meant for students doing linguistics. So today we are going to talk about bilingualism, and we start by attempting to give it a definition, though it is difficult to define. But we say that the term bilingualism was initially coined to refer to those situations characterized by the existence of two different languages within the repertoire of either an individual or the society. We mean by speech repertoire the languages and varieties or dialects via which an individual interacts with other members of his society and which he can use for different purposes or functions. We have to emphasize at this level, however, that bilingualism is not a phenomenon of a language. It is rather a characteristic of the use of language. It is not a feature of the code, but of the message of the individual who has got some reasons for being a bilingual. I give here, or I report, some definitions that were given by scholars and sociolinguists in this connection, and they start by Bloomfield, 1932, who was considered to be the first one to deal with bilingualism, and who considered it to be a native-like control of two languages. That is to say, bilingualism for him should involve fluency in the two languages. But we have to say that this is considered to be an extremist point of view. Some other views are expressed by scholars like Diebold, 1961, who sees that the concept bilingualism can be extended to include only passive knowledge of the written language or any contact with possible models in a second language and the ability to use them in the environment of the native language. So what they understand here is the adherents of such positions see that receptive knowledge is enough for there to be bilingualism. Mackay, 1959, argues that since it is always difficult and almost impossible to determine exactly when or the juncture at which an individual becomes a bilingual, it is necessary to extend the definition of bilingualism to include the use of not only two languages but of any number of languages. And bilingualism in this connection will be considered as the ultimate use of two or more languages by the same individual. So now the question which we can raise is, who is the bilingual individual? So simply put, the bilingual individual has at his disposal two languages that he can use for his different communicative needs and purposes. The mother tongue and the foreign language, that is to say, first and second language. For most individuals, the first language learned, the mother tongue, is also the most used, and conversely, the second language is also secondary in terms of use. There are, of course, exceptional cases of individuals, migrants, especially who are involved in language contact situations in which the mother tongue loses its position as a primary medium of communication and becomes limited to home and friendship. In other words, it gets displaced in all the other domains by the dominant language of the country, the host country more precisely. Without going into the details of such situations, the bilingual individual can be defined as a person who uses two or more languages or dialects in his everyday life, Within such perspectives, the bilingual individual does not necessarily need to show native-like fluency in the languages he speaks. He simply needs to produce meaningful utterances to command at least one language skill from the four skills. That is to say, here we are speaking about reading, speaking, listening, and writing in another language, and to use several languages alternatively. This is Romain 1997 and Mackay 2000. Now we go to talk about bilinguals, another view which is expressed by Grossian. Bilinguals usually acquire and use their languages for different purposes and in different domains of life, with different people, different aspects of life, because different aspects of life require different languages. There are cases of semi-bilinguals. The term was coined to refer to bilinguals who acquire different languages but who do not develop. This is which is important here, which do not develop full competence in any of the languages they speak. The semi-bilinguals generally present certain linguistic deficiencies, and they have been classified as the deficits in 6 areas of language. Number 1, size of vocabulary. Number 2, correctness of language. Number 3, language creativity and creation. Number 4, unconscious processing of language. Number 5, mastery of the functions of language. And number 6, meanings and imagery, which means that they present some certain differences when compared to monolinguals, for example. There are also what can be called coordinate bilinguals and compound bilinguals. So the combined bilinguals are those in whom two languages form a merged system. Coordinate bilinguals are those in whom the two languages systems are kept distinct and separate. The compound has a single semantic base connected to input and output mechanisms, while the coordinate has two semantic bases, each connected to language specific input-output system. So this is the main difference between coordinate and compound bilinguals. Now we move to speak about a third aspect of bilingualism, which is the advantages of bilingualism. And here, a frequently asked question is whether a bilingual speaker's brain functions differently from that of a monolingual's brain. A more technical way of asking the question, as Leeway 2000, page 223 argues, is whether language is differently organized and processed in the brain of a bilingual compared with the monolingual. Different answers and different views, once again, have been expressed in this connection. And existing data actually shows that the left hemisphere strongly dominates language processing of both monolinguals and bilinguals, and that differences between them are the exception rather than the rule. Bilinguals do not seem to vary from monolinguals in neurological processes. The lateralization of language in the brains of the two groups of speakers is similar. This is a view which is expressed once again by Dewey 2000 and Mackay 2000 as well. However, current research suggests that there are specific overlapping and interacting benefits for a bilingual person. These are of a communicative, cognitive, and cultural nature. We sum up these benefits and these advantages, and we start by talking about the communicative advantages. Within the communicative advantages, we have some sections, sorry. The first one is relationship with parents. So being children of parents with different languages is a real special linguistic situation to which the children have to adapt themselves. Being bilinguals facilitates the task of such children communicating with their parents and in each of their parents' preferred language. The second subsection is community relationships. The bilingual has the chance to communicate to a wide variety of people than a monolingual. Bilingual children are generally much at ease communicating with the external world via languages that are different from the ones spoken at home. The external world represents a world of relationships at school and extended large neighborhood. When they are faced with subtle and fine textures, the bilingual children adapt their linguistic behaviors as necessary to meet the communicative requirements of such textures, which means that they adapt themselves with such an ease to different communicative situations. Subsection number 3 is the transnational communication. So bilingualism is a way to transcend the barriers that generally exist between nations and between ethnic groups. Bilingualism facilitates an international as well as inter-ethnic communication and allows one to establish or create relationships within the community and across societies or nations. Another subsection is language sensitivity. So bilinguals develop a sensitivity in communication and which is triggered by their ability to wave between languages in their constant monitoring which language to use in which situation. They are, as a result of that, more attuned to the communicative needs of with whom they interact. The second advantage of bilingualism is the cultural advantages. And here we are speaking once again about two main cultural advantages. So the first one is being a bilingual implies living into all worlds of experience and to be in touch with two or more cultures. Language is the tool to penetrate different cultures. The second cultural advantage is a bilingual might have easy access to the job market as he may have a larger portfolio of jobs available. This is one of the potential economic advantages. Now, the third type of advantages related to bilingualism is the cognitive advantages. And research has shown in this connection that bilinguals show more abilities in thinking. They make proof of creative thinking, of fast cognitive development, of greatest sensitivity in communication, of flexible thinking, of more awareness of languages associations, and of more fluency and elaboration thinking than monolinguals. Now, there are, however, some disadvantages of bilingualism, and they can be summed up actually, these are really minor, but we should mention some of them. So there are some problems that may be caused by bilingualism. And the first thing is that more time and efforts are deployed by the bilingual parents to maintain two languages and bring up children bilingually. The second advantage is that bilinguals have to face the challenge of coping with school curriculum in either language in a short time. And the third disadvantage is problems of identity that may result in a sort of confusion. And this is the most basic type of disadvantage. And because we, in the bilingual person, a child, for example, who speaks French and English fluently, is he or she to be considered French or English or Anglo-French? Similarly, the child who speaks English and a main language like Welsh, is he Welsh, English, British, European, or what? Furthermore, a person speaking fluently three or four languages, with which ethnic group is he or she going to identify himself or herself? Despite these disadvantages, bilingualism is not to be blamed for or held responsible for bilingual children exhibiting language or personality problems. It is also not to be blamed for any social unrest that may result from the presence or the existence of more than one language in the community. I'd like to conclude by saying that bilingualism is not static, it is not unitary. It is shaped in different ways, and of course, it changes depending on a variety of historical, cultural, political, economic, environmental, linguistic, psychological, and other factors. We conclude also by saying that people's attitudes towards bilingualism will always vary and change as the society progresses and as our understanding of bilingual speakers' knowledge and skills grows. However, one thing is certain, more and more people in the world will need to become bilinguals because of the urgent needs for the use of different languages to establish communication, to establish contact between people in different nations and in different parts of the world. And as Lewis says, bilingualism will stay as long as humankind walks the earth. Sorry. This account, I have to specify here, is by no means an exhaustive account, but the only the major and the main aspect of bilingualism that were estimated as really crucial and that our students at this level of their studies need to know about bilingualism. But there is always room to go further and to take up issues and think deeply about these or reflect on these issues. On my part, I've chosen, or I suggest some questions for my students' reflection that they might perhaps search about and try to deal with. So the first question or the first issue is, according to you, is bilingualism to be measured according to native fluency in the two languages, according to equal competence in the two languages, or according to full or partial mastery of the two languages? So which one would you opt for? And you have, of course, to try and justify your answers. Issue number two is that most people would define a bilingual as a person who can speak two languages. What about a person who can understand the second language perfectly but cannot speak it? What about a person who can speak a language but is not literate in it? And what about an individual, who cannot speak or understand speech in the second language, but can read and write it? Should these categories of people too be considered as bilingual or not?